Dr. Mindy Weinstein, the famous psychologist, professor, author, entrepreneur, all of these things. You hang around, you raise a family too. Where do you find the time to do all of this stuff? The only thing I know you don't do is spend a lot of time shoveling snow.
True. I don't have to do that. We just have sunshine here. That's
as a resident of the sunny state of Arizona, no snow to deal with.
No snow. So I definitely save some time there. I do get that question sometimes of how do you do it all? And it's not probably the best answer, but I just do. I just get things done and I'm very scheduled, but it's always prioritizing the day.
My brother and I, working here at Flowers, had a couple of new projects we wanted people to take on. So we asked these two people to take on these meaty projects. And one of the people said to us, do you know these two really important projects? And is it a coincidence or is it by design that you assigned those two projects to two women, one who was pregnant with one child at home, the other one had two small children at home? We hadn't even realized it. And then she said, she went on to say that I just assumed you did that because you realized young working moms just don't have time for the nonsense. They just got to get stuff done.
Exactly.
And so often the people who get things done are just busy all the time. I worked for a guy for 14 years who was a well-organized machine. When I worked in social services, he ran St. John's Home for Boys. And his line was, if you want to get something done, give it to a busy person. And you be a busy person.
Yes.
So bring us up to speed. You had a good Thanksgiving?
Yeah, I had a great Thanksgiving. I've been fortunate. My family's been moving out to this direction. So I now have my parents here part-time. And then, so I was going to say snowbirds, but they're not snowbirds because they live in Orange County. So they're coming out here when it's not 115. And then I have my sisters. So we had a really big Thanksgiving. It was nice. We hosted it at our house too. But my husband's the one who's the good cook. So if we have people over, he's the cook. I cook because we need to eat. But what about you? How was your Thanksgiving?
It was good, smaller than usual for us, but very, very nice. I just enjoy that whole weekend. How often do you get to put 4 days together when we're going into our very, very busy season?
Right.
I'm embarrassed to tell you, I get a lot of work done over that weekend, but it's more organizational stuff, projects that you hadn't begun to where you need an hour or two to just sit and go through your paperwork and focus on one thing. It's a good weekend to do those kinds of projects.
True. Because Friday's a quiet day, when it comes to that.
Well, I come to the office. It's not that crowded on a Friday, but it's, when you can spread things out and say, okay, I'm going to knock this off today,
Right.
So the book, The Power of Scarcity, been a topic of conversation around here for a long time since you and I were first introduced. Really good work in this book, Dr. Weinstein, AKA Mindy. I think the idea grew out of your class at Grand Canyon University in terms of teaching principles of marketing and how to explain human behavior. But how did it percolate and crystallize into this specific idea around scarcity?
So I have been a professor for a while, in marketing, and I'm a full-time professor at GCU. So I have, I think now I'm at thousands of students that I've taught over the years, but I'm also a marketing practitioner. That's my background. And so I had a natural curiosity into what motivates customers. And when I teach my class, it doesn't matter if it's the digital marketing class I'm teaching or my advertising promotions class, I always drive home the concept of you have to understand your customer. You have to understand your audience. You have to understand what motivates people. So when I went to pursue my PhD, which is something that I did, years ago, I was getting a PhD in general psychology. I decided, let's go that route. I have the business degrees already. And we know that to be a good marketer, you got to have some psychology under your belt to understand that.
And it's amazing how many psychologists have become good marketers.
Right. Yes. And so when I was working on my PhD and had to pick my dissertation topic, I knew that I wanted to look at something that was consumer behavior related. And as I started studying and doing research, I kept coming across scarcity. I knew from a marketing perspective, I always thought of scarcity of, buy now, running out. But once I started looking into the research, I realized it was very complex and multi-layered, and there's different types that reach different people. So it caused me to want to study that for my dissertation. And then once I was done with my dissertation, finished school, COVID hit, and then watching the whole thing with toilet paper, I thought, okay, this book or my dissertation needs to now get into book format because we're seeing all this play out in real life.
I guess it's like when you buy a red car, you realize every other car on the road seems to be a red car.
True.
And when you finally honed in on, geez, this scarcity just keeps coming up and up and up, you must have said, geez, how could it be so bold and so big there and not seen a lot of other people do that work?
That's what was really surprising to me. I mean, I was shocked because I even started looking at have other people written on this. And there have been some books, that talk about scarcity, but it's a little bit different perspective than what I wrote. And, my book is a business book, but the feedback I've been getting from a lot of people or consumers are wanting to read it because they want to understand their own behaviors of why am I motivated by certain things? For me, the amount of research that's out there in the academic world, there's a lot and it spans for decades. It just hasn't been out there for everyone else to read. And that's it's time. And that's really what the book does.
Well, your subtitle is Leveraging Urgency and Demand to Influence Customers' Decisions. Let's back up a little bit on that and tell us what you mean by influence.
Right. So influence, it's really causing customers to take action. And that's what I mean by influence when I talk about that. And that's the thing with scarcity is it's one of the many influence factors that have been identified. We just know that it's one of the strongest ones. And a lot of that's because it's primal. We don't want things to be scarce. And there's a reaction in our brain that starts triggering something's urgent here. So again, influence is really just motivating, causing someone to take action. Now, one thing I did in my book, and I made sure because, from my perspective, there are all these different types of marketing, but it always needs to be ethical and honest. You want to be able to build trust with customers. And what I was even uncovering as I was doing research is that there's a lot of good that comes up from companies just communicating, we have this exclusive group, or this is running out and they're just letting people know, or this event is filling up. And it's actually more of a relationship builder too.
We're speaking in early December, but we've just recently witnessed one of the great scarcity examples of all time when Taylor Swift announced her returning to the tour, and the Live Nation and Ticketmaster websites overwhelmed by demand. Peel that apart for us a little bit. What happened there? What is the lore of a great talent like that? How does your work on scarcity give us some explanations to what happened?
You know what? I was following that very closely because that's scarcity. The seats.
Well, you and Taylor are very close. I know.
Oh, we go way back. Of course. But, watching that whole thing play out, and I will tell you just more from a personal situation, it was pretty funny. The day the tickets went on sale, I had class. And so I was teaching my class, and I had two students come up to me before class started and said, Dr. Weinstein, would it be okay if we were on our computers buying Taylor Swift tickets when they released? What do you say to that? Because they said they're going to sell out. And, I'm a softie. So of course I said, okay. And so I got to actually watch them go through the process. But here's what happens. So with something we know is popular or high demand, and we know there's a chance we might not be able to get it, we're going to hyper focus. So you had all these fans just ready to go. I had two of them in my class I got to witness. But there's really a driver of a fear, and it's a fear of missing out. If I don't get on here on this website right now and buy, I might miss my opportunity to see Taylor Swift. And it's really FOMO. I mean, that's the buzzword, fear of missing out, but it's really based on a deeper psychological principle known as loss aversion. As human beings, we don't want to lose something. And that was a situation where people looked at, I might lose this opportunity. And then you can even see, so what happens, so you got that fear of loss, so FOMO. Then people who didn't get a ticket, now these tickets are very valuable. And that's also something with scarcity. A scarce product, scarce item, scarce event equals value. That's how our brains work. And there's even been brain scans that show that when we're faced with a scarce situation, and I'm not talking about like scarce in terms of surviving, I'm talking about a scarce product. There's been brain studies on this where we can see that the brain automatically starts processing the value of what we're looking at, skips everything else. And so in that situation with Taylor Swift, you now see a secondary market. At one point, I don't know if they sold or not, but I was seeing tickets on the secondary market for the tens of thousands of dollars. Value. People don't want to miss out. So now it's even more valuable. That was scarcity in action, what we saw there.
Sometimes you don't want an efficient market, right?
You mean
an efficient market eliminates those psychological spikes that the scarcity factor would sometimes create?
For some businesses, yes, I would say that. I mean, there was even one business that I talked to, and she has this great jewelry brand, very popular among celebrities. And she said she was always really fearful of not being able to keep up with demand and having enough supply. And then she realized that when they were started to sell out, that became actually one of their biggest assets, is that they would be sold out. People had to be on wait lists, and they would notify people when there was a restocked item, and then it would sell out again. And it's just, now they know that that's okay. And so it's turned out to be a big selling point for them. And now they're, very, very lucrative, successful business.
Tell me about the phenomenon. You wouldn't know about it, but you might have seen it on TV, Dr. Mindy, that when there's a snowstorm coming in New York, all of a sudden, milk, bread, shovels, rock salt, all sell out in instants.
Right. So a lot of that's panic buying, and we saw that even with COVID, and that's, the toilet paper side of things. But it actually goes back to that idea of fear. We don't want to be in situations as humans where we can't get something that we feel we need or want. And so when we see something like that coming, it does trigger that panic buying. At the same time, what happens, and there's been a lot of psychological research on this, is we also assume that other people are thinking about the storm coming and they're going to go out and buy the supplies. So now you feel like you're also competing with those people. And so a lot of it's perception. Haven't had to deal with that. We have monsoons out here, but that's a little bit different. I don't even know if I could shovel snow. I'm sure I could figure that out, but haven't had to do that before.
You didn't get that PhD for nothing.
True.
In addition to the panic buying, I was at a meeting this morning. Here we are in the pre-Christmas period, and I was with a fellow who runs a very successful, extremely high-end jewelry business here in our community. We had the same meeting a year ago, and I happened to sit next to him at the board meeting a year ago, and he told me that watches, which at one time we were told were going to go away, that young people don't buy watches like my generation did, so watches weren't going to be a good item anymore. And then everything was digital. You had a phone, so why do you need a watch? And lo and behold, watches are more popular than ever because they're not just for telling time. They're a fashion statement, right, I guess, and they're a collectible. And a year ago, he told me that he had his watches, his high-end watches, the Rolexes, the Petit Philippe, were all on allocation. And people had to fill out an online application to even get in the queue to be considered to maybe get a watch. I said, people aren't filling those out. And he pulled out his phone and he started showing me how these people, why they should be considered. Here's their and he pulled it up with their shopping history. And I said, well, why is that? He said, well, the market and during COVID, it got so upside down, they're not allowed to sell a watch above the, the manufacturer's suggested price. And so he says, I'd be selling a Petit Philippe for $50,000. And they could turn around the next day and sell it for $100,000.
Wow.
And he said, so we're allocating those. And I said, well, what goes into your thinking about who should get a watch? He said, so they have to fill out this application, which was kind of extensive. And then the salesperson who is working with them has to wade in too on whether or not they think this person should be in the queue to be allocated to maybe in a lottery get an opportunity to buy a watch. And then they lay over the sales data and then demographic data. So this one fellow he showed me an application of is a doctor new to the community, an anesthesiologist, I think it was. And he said, now here's someone who I would give consideration to because where they were in their age, family situation, professional situation, it was likely that they would become a quite a good customer over the next 20 years. I found it fascinating to hear how you have the scarcity issue,
Right.
And you have this misaligned market where you could buy something new and take it out in the secondary market and make a lot of money on it right away. So he was looking for people who wouldn't flip, who would keep it. And then he was looking, look, I have this customer, but he's an old guy like Jim. He's not going to be around that much longer. Let me give it to the 40-year-old who is in a good earning profession, who's likely to be a good longer-term customer. Amazing phenomenon to see. And now he says a year later, I said, well, clearly they're not scarce. He goes, oh, no, the watch manufacturers have made sure they've stayed scarce. They're not over manufacturing. They like this situation where their products are in such high demand and people are, oh, hey, you're going to be in Europe. Is there a chance you could go buy me this one? What do you make of that whole situation?
Oh my God. That is just filled. Like when you were talking, that
would be a whole semester case study for you.
That is. And I'm thinking about so many of the theories that really support everything that happened there. So with scarcity, there's something to know. There's different types. There's demand-related scarcity. Those are things that are popular, bestsellers, those kind of things. Then you have time-related scarcity. So those could be promotions or a limited time product. But then you have supply-related scarcity and also limited edition, which is part of that. Supply-related scarcity is what you just described. So when something is in short supply, whether intentional, and a lot of luxury brands do that because it actually dilutes the brand and the value if they have a lot. So supply related, it could also be because of a shortage of some type distribution, but that supply related scarcity speaks to a certain customer. It speaks to people who want to feel unique. They want to have self-expression. So that's thinking about the watch. They don't want to be like everybody else. They want to stand out. And it's a lot of that conspicuous consumption. So those kind of products. And what's so fascinating about the example you gave me is there was a lot of things that went really well with that. So you had supply related. So again, not everybody can have it. So those who do have it, it's unique and it's a luxury item.
A lot of people are going to hear no.
Right. A lot of people are going to hear no. And then the other part is that exclusiveness. So when something is exclusive and it's a little bit harder to get, it's even that whole mentality of playing hard to get, where you have to apply and you don't know if you're going to get it. It just causes you to want it even more. You think about Ivy League schools. That is definitely scarcity in action too, because you apply, not everyone's going to get in. It makes you want it more. It's just still a very, very similar phenomenon there.
Your fellow professor and author, Scott Galloway, who's a professor at the Stern School here at NYU in New York, talks all the time about how the Ivy League schools are the ultimate luxury brands.
They are. And that whole scandal that happened, a little while back with the different people.
Oh, I didn't hear about it.
No, it wasn't in the news or anything. But you think about when you step back and think about that scandal, it's because, those parents didn't want to be told no, that their kids couldn't go to that school. So they're going to take the measures. They're going to hyper-focus, do what they need to do. That's what our brains do when we're in a situation where something's going to be harder to get. We're going to stay hyper-focus. How can we rectify this situation? This is now urgent. And those examples, even with something that's a luxury item, we don't need it to survive, but our brain's still going to look at
another area that there too, when you get hyper-focused and you have the means and you're used to getting your own way. Let's go back to that higher education scandal. Tell me about the psychology of crossing the line on morality, on legality.
I'm talking about brain scans a bit, but when we're faced with scarcity, so our brain will skip normal processes or normal steps in a decision-making process. It will go straight to valuation. So we're not thinking necessarily like we should be thinking, I guess is the way to put it. So in a situation like that, when you are looking at something like, don't tell me no, it's going to make you push that much harder. And we do know that there's competition that starts to build up inside you. So you want to win in a way, you want to get to what you were told you can't get. Of course, that's teenagers. That's life with teenagers too. So we know that as well. But that's the thing. And so you start to really take measures, things you wouldn't normally do, because again, your mind is telling you this is an urgent matter. Doesn't make it right by any means, but we just know this. And just again, the way that our mind works, it's subconscious though, meaning that we we can stop and think about our actions. It's not like we can't think about it, just we might not want to.
Two things I was chatting with Lisa here in the office the other day, who you know, and we were chatting about our conversation and what we were taking away from your book. We were fighting over it in the last 24 hours that we had it, that you were good enough to send it on to us. And we were chatting about the theories in here, and two real life situations came up. One is the American Express Black Card. Now, you can't apply for them, I'm told. You have to be awarded them. They're very, very expensive. They come laden with benefits. I'm not sure to what degree most people use the benefits of those cards, but it clearly is something. It matters. I have one because a buddy of mine's the CEO of American Express. I was telling Lisa that I was buying a pair of shoes, and it had a sale sign on it. And it's the only shoes I buy that are expensive. And I buy the same one all the time whenever they wear out, and they don't wear out very easily. And I was saying to the fellow, okay, I'll take a pair of these shoes. They're Ferragamos. I said, I'm going to buy them today because they're on sale. He goes, oh, the sale's over. I said, sale's over? It says right there. So he said, well, let me check with my manager. And he checks with his manager. He says, okay, we'll give you the sale price, but we should have taken the sign down. I said, yeah, you should have if they're not on sale anymore.
Right.
So he said, and so I take out my credit card to pay, and I give him this American Express Black Card. And he goes, come on. I said, what's the matter? He goes, you got an American Express Black Card? You're arguing with me over $80? And I said, wow, the impact that what it triggers, and that, a lot of people maybe myself a little bit included, although I don't use it very often, putting that card down on the counter is a way of signaling, I guess, huh?
It is. It's prestige, and it's showing that you are part of a group that not a lot of other people are part of. So you are distinct in that way. And that feeling of belonging to that group, again, that's admired. And so there's a huge, huge thing with that. Just when we're talking about being exclusive, I don't know if you read even recently about Delta, how they're going to make it a little bit harder for people to get into their clubs. That's
next on my list.
Oh, okay.
Lisa's shaking her head here vigorously, because those are the two. I said there were two things we talked about in the last 24 hours in anticipation of chatting with you. And that was the other one. I'm a frequent traveler on Delta Airlines, and I got to sit on it. And Lisa and I were chatting about it because I thought it was so clever.
Right.
It started out by saying, we apologize for the experience you may have had in our clubs. The lines have been long just to get in, and sometimes you get in and there's not a seat available. You have to wait for a seat. And so we're going to help you out by improving the experience, by increasing our fees fairly dramatically. I thought it was so clever.
It was. It caught my attention too. I was actually saved that article because I thought this is such a classic example.
There's a whole other class. It's so easy for you.
I know there is so much material every day. There's just something else. But I think that nothing else could possibly come up than Taylor Swift, happen or something like that. But the Delta. Okay. So what's really interesting about that? So like when you think about scarcity, and I keep talking about being exclusive, right? And so that's the club. You're part of this exclusive club. You paid to be able to go there, when you're at the airport. Yet you go in and all the signs around you, all these people tells you really that this doesn't feel very exclusive at all. And so now,
is there anybody not in this club?
Right. So it backfires. So that whole idea of feeling special and all that, you don't feel special. You're now just part of this massive group of people. And I did think it was brilliant the way that they came out and positioned it, because it was, we are helping you. We heard you. Basically, we're going to make it a little harder to get in, but hey, it won't be as crowded.
Those others who don't really belong, they can't afford it, so they'll melt away.
Right. Don't worry about it. We got you. But that is a really good example. And I love that that's what you're going to bring up, because that's been on my mind. Well,
let's stay on the whole clubs theory. Mm-hmm. It was a Groucho Marx said, he wouldn't want to belong to a club that would have him as a member. And we all want to belong to the club that's the hardest to get into, right?
Right.
The hardest golf club or social club or dinner club. And the clubs are very much a a part of the social fabric in London, for example.
Mm-hmm.
But, it's which club do you belong to? It really does matter. And I think you can look at fraternities and sororities on campuses as forms of clubs too. And
Yes.
there's a real hierarchy and pecking order there too, right?
Right. And that really speaks to that longing for community that we want, which still goes hand in hand with everything we've been talking about, but we want to feel like we belong to a community. And if it could be a community that's not going to just be open to everyone, that goes back to then feeling like you are special because you are now part of this community that not everyone else can be a part of. And that is really, really a big thing. Even like on those lines of VIPs, the VIP is a big deal. Getting an invite, you're invite only and you're part of that list. It makes us feel good. It does. And it's still though scarcity because everyone's not getting in. Not everyone's in the club. Not everyone's been invited. So it really fuels that within us.
At Worth Media, Worth Magazine, where we take groups of people to events, Cannes, South by Southwest. They're this week at Art Basel in Miami, Davos. There's another event my wife and I have been fortunate enough to attend that's invitation only. It's called the Allen & Company, which is a wonderful boutique investment bank here around a long, long time in New York. And they run the Sun Valley Media Conference, where you see all those, they call it the billionaires summer camp. But when you get something going like that, where there's scarcity, exclusivity, a community, being part of a community, feeling relationships there, then you got it all going, huh?
You do. And, then you're like the watches where you're going to end up with people wanting to be on a wait list to get into your event, to even be invited to it. I even think about, it's what you're talking about with clubs, but even some businesses like platforms have done this. Clubhouse, that social media platform, when they came out, it was all invite only. Did you get an invitation to be part of this? Yeah. Did you get an invitation for this conference over here? So
it's tale of hotness.
Yes,
faded quickly. Clubhouse.
It did.
Why do you think?
So
they couldn't keep the scarcity thing going?
I think that it was novel, and what I've seen just on like with social media and different platforms, it's like Be Real. Be Real is very popular right now, but it doesn't have a lot of other functionalities. It's this one thing. And I think that's my opinion on Clubhouse. It was great. You could get groups in there, but that was the one thing. You think about the bigger players like Instagram and, of course, Facebook. They've got a lot of different features and are constantly trying to add to what they're doing with videos and images and live events and things like that. And so I think the popularity was a lot of scarcity in the beginning because it was invite only. So it seemed very interesting. And then it was novel. And then it just, fizzled out a bit.
Let's go back. You talked about social media. When I first heard about and learned about Facebook, you had to have an EDU. So you had to be a student at university to be able to go on Facebook. And that created a scarcity thing for a while, didn't it?
It did. Yes, it did. Because that was for my recollection. When Facebook came out, it was a lot of just connecting people within universities, I believe.
Yes.
So it's come a long way since then.
But they've been able to manage the transition from I have a scarcity product to I have a mass product. And that's a hard road to travel.
I think, though, they've really embraced then the whole community side and connection. That's that social connection that we all strive for.
A need to be there.
Yes. A need to be there, right? You want to be part of something. And so I think that's where a lot of that draw was. And then, it's popular. So people know that you're there. But then now, we're talking about Facebook. When I bring that up to my students, I just get that look of, well, that's what my parents are on. I'm on this. And so, there's always the things that people gravitate towards.
I do that regularly when I meet with groups of young people in a company, asking them what they're spending time on social media. And I hear that all the time now. Frankly, that's been for the last few years, that they're never on Facebook because that's their parents are on there. I don't think I completely believe it, but I've heard that a bunch. In the meantime, there's a few billion people on Facebook. Managing the transition is difficult. Getting that scarcity thing going for you is a pretty good rocket fuel for product companies, for service companies, for businesses in general. when you're advising companies or when you're putting companies in business yourself, how do you think about playing the scarcity side of it at different points of development in a company's existence?
Not even just the different stages, but just which scarcity is going to work for which type of business, because they don't work overall for everything. And so like thinking about supply related, that works really well. We know for the luxury brands and the conspicuous items, so that's conspicuous consumption. When I say that, we know that works really well there. But then you have demand related. As much as supply related speaks to people who want to be unique and self-expression, you have demand related that really speaks to people who want to be able to make quicker decisions, take mental shortcuts. They want to be conformed to what other people are doing. So that might make more sense for your brand. And examples of that are things like marking something as most popular or bestseller, or letting people know that something is running out due to high demand. And then you have time related. And time related, I'll tell you, that pretty much goes for most categories, because people are now just competing with the clock. It could be a promotion or just something that's offered for a limited time. So keeping that in mind when you're deciding from a business perspective, how should I go about scarcity and how should I apply that? Well, we first need to think about, who is our customer? If they are someone who wants those mental shortcuts, pointing them in the right direction of here's what most people buy. And I like even thinking about that from consulting and services, because it doesn't always have to be product. You can say, this is the most popular package people buy, or this is the most popular, service option. And that allows us as customers to give our brain a break and say, okay, well, then I choose that one too. And so that can go through the whole process of the stages of the business, which work really well. But going back just as an example of what works good when something's getting ready to start is having, whether it's a product, having a pre-order where people can pre-order and be one of the first to have something,
like all those people who pre-ordered that book called The Power of Scarcity.
Exactly. I actually had at one point, right when the book launched, it was actually very ironic. So when the book launched, the next day on Amazon, it actually showed only 5 left. It said only 5 left. And I had people screenshotting it thinking I did it on purpose. They're like, did you do scarcity to your own book?
You had to make the point.
I thought it was pretty funny. I wish I could take credit for that. Going back to you could do wait list, you can do pre-orders, you can, tease out products or services to come. I mean, that's a huge thing. I even like the idea of once your brand has been around a while, whether you're a company that has a product or you have a service, doing bundles. You can create a limited edition bundle. And that's something you could do later on in the process. You've been around a while, you want to do something different for your customers, or having something that's, a limited edition packaging to a product, or it's a slight twist on the original product itself. But those are things you can do as you move ahead. But the first thing is just understanding that the different types of scarcity are going to work different and they're not going to be for everybody. So that's step one. And then the rest you can start to implement.
So I'm sure you've studied this with your classes, but one that I've watched from a distance, and we work with the company here at Flowers. We work with the chocolate company Godiva. They have a good product, but I've been watching and wondering how it would work out for them, because they had a prestige product, a high-end in the category product, and they opened up a lot of stores, and the stores were quite attractive, and I thought they were really good. I didn't know what the economics of the stores were, but I thought they were very good for the brand because they showcased their product in exactly the setting they wanted to. And then they made them experiential with dipping berries and things. Although they spent all that money on those stores, it was still available in a local mall here. They have a beautiful Godiva store, maybe 100 feet from the entrance of Macy's, which also carried Godiva product, but in not quite as elegant a setting as their own stores. Then I started seeing them in the chain stores or chain drug stores and discount stores. And I wondered, how could they pull all of that off? I bought a prestige brand here, and now I'm taking it to mass. When you study those examples, and I don't know how it's worked out for the parent company. I know the product is still good, the packaging is still good, but how could it be an exclusive prestige product and be everywhere? And then, of course, they closed all the stores.
Right. So, but that's the thing. It went from being exclusive and prestige to not being that, and not saying that it's diminishing the brand itself, but in that environment, I remember those stores.
Changing the brand though, isn't it?
Bit. Yeah. I mean, it is a bit. I mean, though I remember those stores too. And it was very much about the experience, which a lot of shoppers want an experience. And that's a huge thing that we see in, consumer behavior. Well, now they're not getting that experience. They're shopping at the grocery store. Oh, I have my eggs, my milk. I'm going to go grab some chocolate. So it definitely does bring that down. Here's the thing, and this is just the part that's hard to know, is when they were doing that more, exclusive and the experience, how many people were they drawing in? And yes, it was more high end, but it was still chocolate. So it wasn't out of the price point for a lot of people. So that's something to keep in mind. And without knowing what their sales were, bring it into the supermarket, you still might be able to reach enough people that are willing to pay that price. And so a little bit different, but yeah, definitely not exclusive once you have it everywhere. And makes me even think about, there was a lawsuit years ago with Christian Dior and their perfume and cologne because they wanted to keep it exclusive and control distribution, which you want to do as a company, yet it was in grocery stores. And so it definitely brings it down in terms of perceived value.
What are your observations around Amazon and Prime Day? I mean, great marketers, they created Prime Day and, drove enormous sales volumes. It seems like it's beginning to fade in its ability to move the needle as much as it used to.
Very interesting. And that's time-related scarcity because it's a sale. So that's what is happening with Prime Day. And, there is still a draw to it because people don't want to miss out on a good deal. But when you do something frequently, which is what Amazon, because they had their Prime Day, I think there was the July event, and then there was the October event, and then of course we had Black Friday.
July one didn't go as well as they thought.
So they keep doing it. So there's also that risk from a company perspective. If you keep holding sales like that, then people are going to wait, and it's not as exciting as before. And so doing something too much can backfire like that too. And I think we're seeing that a bit with just their major events that they're trying to do, and they're just doing too many of them. Macy's
got themselves in trouble because they would have Wednesday sale days. And it got to the point where you felt foolish if you went into Macy's on a Tuesday or a Thursday or a Monday or a Friday and bought anything, because that same item was going to be 20, 30% less on Wednesday. And I think they trained their consumer to only shop on Wednesday. And then they got smart and they said, okay, we're not going to advertise, but we'll let you have the Wednesday sale price if you came in on Tuesday or Thursday. But that's something, it seemed to me from afar that they had to back out of that because it just distorted their consumer behavior so much. Because people say, I feel foolish going in buying a new package of Hanes T-shirts on a Tuesday, and then the guy who buys it the next day is going to get it for several dollars cheaper. Right. So those customers start to value that product at the sales price that they know they can get by just waiting. Yep. I see that too with restaurants. There's certain restaurants that always have a coupon, dinner for two, and it lays out all the things you get. Why would you ever go and pay full price when you could just bring this with you? It brings the value down. So those are things that the frequency can be very detrimental to a business. And that's something, you see it. These are, just a couple examples, but that's something even actually that's come out in research too, which it's not shocking results that we see that yes, it does, make a difference. Boy, it must be fun to be in your class. I hope so. Because you're such a smarty pants. You know your subject so well. Plus, every day there are new examples for the marketers in your classes to just study what's happening in real time all around them, huh? And it's fun. Students will bring examples to me because I've opened their eyes to it. So they'll tell me, look I got this, I saw this on Instagram in my feed, look at this. I know what's happening and what they're trying to do here. Even my poor kids, they do the same thing. My son, he actually wrote on a whiteboard because he's heard me talk about scarcity so much of all the different types. And he was just drawing on my board. And I thought, now I've got a little marketer on my hands. Well, even if he doesn't decide to go career-wise that way, just a good sensitivity, because it's not just in selling a product. I've seen religions use it. Yeah. I've even seen, and I've actually seen it in people when they're getting jobs. That's again, what is so amazing is it's not
can be a product, it could be a service, you could be a business owner, you could be a marketer, or you could just be someone trying to get a job, and saying things like, you get a job offer and just asking, thank you so much. Can I take some time to think about it? That actually triggers that same reaction of scarcity, because you just made yourself a little bit hard to get. Now that person is like, okay, there's things like that. Or, different scenarios where if you're a consultant and you can only work with so many clients, and just saying, I'm selective on who I work with. Sometimes it's just the things we say and it's all truthful, but it just still causes that psychological or physiological reaction.
How valuable it is when you get your brand, your business, McKinsey. Well, they used to be among the smaller of the consulting firms. So if you got McKinsey, you really had the best there. And you've seen it with investment banks. They get that exalted status where they don't take every client. And that's very powerful from a marketer's perspective.
People want to work with you. And being in a situation like that from a business perspective, you get in a situation where potential clients are trying to explain to you why they would be a good fit for you versus the other way around. There's this one agency that I came across, and it's priceless. I can't remember the website, but it's a marketing agency, and you go to their website and it actually doesn't let you in. It has a form you have to fill out to see if they're going to invite you to, and I don't know if it works. It's a European company, but it made me laugh. I don't even remember how I found it. I'm like, okay, well played. Don't know if it's working for you, but well played.
And how about what role countdowns?
Oh, countdown. So the countdown timer. That's huge. So actually the countdown timers, I feel like we all as customers hate them, but they work really well. And even as a customer, they cause us to take action, because now we are competing with the clock. But really, a countdown timer is just showing you how much time is left until the sale ends. It's just bringing it to the forefront. And there was one company that I talked to, they're an e-bike company. And so they sell on their website. That's how they get their sales. And the founder of that company talked about anytime we had a sale that we added that countdown timer, he said we would see sales increase by 40%. I mean, that's not something small. Again, so maybe as customers, we say we don't like them, but we are going to pay attention to them. So from a business perspective, that's not hard to add that to your website. Not hard at all.
We created a couple of years ago. St. Patrick's Day is a fun holiday, and it's not traditionally been the biggest floral holiday, but we do a countdown. It's the 17th of March. St. Patrick's Day, and particularly in ethnic areas like New York, Boston, Chicago, it's a big deal. And of course, restaurants have jumped on the holiday in some places, like a TGI Fridays and things like that, who can popularize those things nationally. But we do a countdown, and we just have fun with it, because every day we get to talk about something that they wouldn't have thought of. Well, should I be connecting with someone, and should that connection elevate to the idea of me sending them something? Some of the products we have a little mug with shamrocks in it, things like that. Very approachable price points, just to help people express themselves and connect to someone who might have a Irish sounding last name or something. Just a reason to connect and say, I'm thinking about you. But we love them because then we can count down on social media, and we can do their favorite Irish songs, their favorite Irish toasts. But it gets very social.
Yeah.
What I mean, in a social media kind of way, where it really becomes fun, and our people really get into it, because they're judging every day the best Irish jokes they heard that day, or the best sayings, or the best movies, the best actors, actresses. It's a fun way for us to get engaged as a group internally, share it with our community, and then have our community participate by submitting ideas or voting on which are the best. So we like countdowns for awareness and for fun.
I love that. And you talking about fun, that was something that surprised me as I was working on this book, because I already had the academic research. I'd done all of this. I knew the different psychological aspects of scarcity, but then seeing, and just the example you gave, how businesses use a countdown timer scarcity because it's time's running out, but using that to create that fun because customers want to have fun. There's excitement. That's one of the things I've seen, looking at different businesses that I was working on the book. It can create excitement. It can create actually a community as well. So that example I gave you, that e-bike company, something else that the founder told me was that the way that they started their business, they were bootstrapping. And so he said they ended up with the wait list because they were trying to keep up with production. But as people were on this wait list, what was really intriguing is they started connecting on social media. And so if they saw that someone had already gotten their bike on Facebook, then they would connect with that person. So send a friend request, then they'd start chatting. And then there ended up being like communities on Facebook where people would talk about how excited they were. They couldn't wait till they got their bike. And the people who had it were talking about what they were doing. Who would have thought? So these things that come out of it, to me, coming from this psychology side of things, that wasn't showing up in brain scans and, these experiments and all these things, but we're seeing it in real life play out like that. So I love what you just said, because that's a great example. You can have some fun.
I'll give you another one I love. There's a young lady we know, her name is Sandy. She runs a company called Dinner en Blanc, an idea that started in Paris 30 or more years ago. And what it is you have to get on a social media list and they won't tell you how to get on, but someone else has to refer you and you get on this list and then you apply and then they decide they're going to hold a dinner in your city, but you don't know where it is. But here are the rules. You have to dress all in white and you have to bring your own stuff. When I say your own stuff, you have to bring your own food, your own table, your own chairs. And so it's this exclusive community. And there's a limit to how many people can attend. My son and a couple of folks from here attended one that Sandy did in New York City, and it was at the Promenade in Lincoln Center. But you don't know that until an hour before the event. So people are standing by. My son said he drove up Madison Avenue, and there were people standing on a corner with a candelabra, their flowers, 2 folding chairs, a white tablecloth, and a box with their food and a cooler with their beverages, waiting to find out where they're going, hail a cab, get over. But when you get that going,
yes, right.
The scarcity, the exclusivity, the funness of it, you really get it going.
Oh, yeah. And that example, you would only be able to point those people out that they're going to the event because you're going to it. Everyone else walking around is like, why are they carrying some folding chairs and a candelabra?
But I think she had 1,500 people show up, and that was the capacity of and she does these all over the world.
Okay, now I want to go too. See, that worked. I have to look this up.
I know somebody, Dr. Mindy. I know somebody. We can get you in.
All right, if I could get in to the exclusive, can you give me an invite?
No.
But that's again another great example.
What a neat book. What a great subject. And what a great thing for people to learn about so they can examine their own behavior, laugh at themselves, be more clever in their lives. And it's not just about selling product. Mm-hmm. It's about getting through life, with a knowledge of the psychologies that drive us, that make us behave. And when you know more about your own behaviors and sometimes be able to laugh at them, I just think you're a smarter person for having spent the time to figure it out. And you can be a better contributor in all the things you do with understanding the foundational elements of things like the power of scarcity. Thanks for spending your time with us, sharing your wisdom. You used to be a COVID buddy of mine, but then we ruined it because we actually met in person.
We did, yes.
But I'm so happy that this project is concluded with you getting your book published and out in the marketplace. I'm sure you're having a blast with it. I just checked on Amazon. There's only 2 copies left at the moment, but you better hurry before they could run out. They may never even print anymore. Who knows?
Thank you so much. This has been great.
Thanks, Dr. Mindy Weinstein, my favorite psychologist and my favorite professor at Grand Canyon University.